She was nervous now. Was it terribly wrong to steal a key and creep into the palace like a thief? If it was only to find someone she loved, did that mean it was not a crime? What if Kai wasn't pleased to see her? Surely when he had heard of all the trouble she had taken to follow him and find him, they would hug and be friends again. Gerda shivered, partly from the cold and partly from fear and expectation. The lights in the palace dimmed one by one. When only the night lights remained, Gerda and the raven knocked gently at the door. Sorry, I lost my spot. Okay, there we go. Gerda and the raven knocked gently on the door. It opened, and a smaller female raven stood inside, hopping excitedly from one leg to the other. I've been so looking forward to seeing you, she squeaked. You have managed to quite charm this ruffian. The look she gave the woodland raven gave the lie to her, calling him a ruffian. Your story was most moving. We will do all that we can to help. Thank you, you are too kind, replied Gerda, and your fiancé was right. You are a very beautiful raven, she added. If a black-feathered bird could blush, the palace raven would have done so. Gerda took the small lamp and the tame raven had carried for her and followed the two birds in the palace. They wound down corridor after corridor until Gerda was sure that they were lost. They passed storerooms and broom cupboards and a vast kitchen with delicious smells and a fat snoring cook. At last they stopped by a small green door. Here we are, whispered the tame raven. No more noise. We are in the living quarters now. As Gerda turned the key in the lock and pushed open the door, she felt a rush of air and shadows leapt in the lamplight. Gerda gasped. The shadows were people, and people running and horses rearing, courting couples and fierce huntsmen. Don't be afraid, said the tame raven, sensing Gerda's fear. These are just the shadows of the dreams of the sleeping courtiers. They cannot harm you while you are still awake. Gerda shivered and mounted the staircase. Another door at the top opened onto a grand corridor with a rich red carpet and fine velvet hangings on the wall. She followed the ravens down the corridor and through a beautiful drawing room full of expensive furniture and lined with pictures of beautiful ladies and stern old gentlemen. Each room they passed seemed grander than the last. Gerda was overwhelmed by the size and grandeur of the palace. She was relieved when at last they came to a last blue bedroom at the end of the most gaily decorated corridor of all. It was as if Gerda was standing under a giant tree. The roof of the bedchamber was painted into interweaving branches, and the fruits of the tree were tiny crystal lights, although of course they were not lit so late at night. In the center of the room was a sturdy pillar, reaching from the ceiling to form the trunk of a tree, and two exquisite canopy beds hung from underneath the trunk. Each bed had a sleeper covered by an eiderdown in the semblance of gilded leaves. Gerda approached the white bed. In it was a beautiful blonde-haired girl, delicate and small-boned like the porcelain doll, the princess. The other bed was red. Heart beating, Gerda turned back the cover. A mass of brown hair rested on the pillow. Gerda gasped. Her eyes filled with tears, and the sleeper awoke. But it was not Kai. Only a prince that looked like Kai. But only his hair was like Kai's. The princess too awoke and sleepily asked what was happening. For the third time since she left home, Gerda told of her adventures, interrupted only by an odd croak of agreement from the ravens. Gerda spoke through tears after her fierce disappointment in discovering that the prince was not Kai. For all her misery, Gerda praised the kindliness of the ravens. For she remembered that they really shouldn't be there and didn't want them to be punished for helping her. The princess, who was wise and kind, and the prince, who was brave and well-mannered, were full of sympathy for Gerda and promised to help her in the morning. But first, insisted the princess, you must sleep in a warm bed. Take mine, offered the prince, for he was a young man of noble heart, if not noble birth. And I shall have someone bring you some hot chocolate to help you sleep, said the princess soothingly. And what of you two? Asked the prince, looking sternly at the ravens. Breaking into the palace in the dead of night? I could have you all executed. Oh, no, protested Gerda. It was all my fault. The prince interrupted her with only a chuckle, and the smile returned to his eyes. I'm only teasing, Gerda. Your friends will not be punished. In fact, they will have a fine reward for their kindness. You are right, my love, added the princess. Such care for others must not go unrewarded. She looked at the ravens and smiled. The woodland raven puffed out his chest and tried to smooth his rather scruffy feathers. The tame raven looked down demurely, but spread her glorious blue-black tail. How would you two like to be the official palace raven? She asked them. Food always at the window, and for you and any young that you may bear, and a warm nest under the eaves of your royal bedroom itself. Tame Raven looked imploringly at her woodland mate and nodded. He would sacrifice his freedom for her adventures, for his love. Ravens have always been wise birds, and these two knew a good offer when they heard it. Stay tuned for the final part of Chapter 4.